It is May 1st. Still. And I have shown you some of the books that I got in April. I got way more books in April than I was ever anticipating getting. I've acquired over 60 books this month. I acquired the books that I bought, which totaled $36, and I've showed you that in another video. So go to that video if you want to see all the books that I bought in April. These are going to be all the books that I've found or otherwise acquired in April for free. What I'm not going to show you is all the huge box of books that my father gave me. He's getting rid of a lot of his collection, paring down, and so I've taken on those books to save them from a worser fate. I'm not going to be showing those books except a few in this video because they're probably going to go straight down to my basement box books, and maybe one day I'll go through all my basement box books and show you those books as well, but that day is not today. Let's start with the books that he gave me that I'm keeping on my TBR shelf. He gave me Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. I've been wanting to read more Thomas Pynchon since I read The Crying of Lot 49, which I loved. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. I don't know what this one is about, but it's one of Pynchon's shorter books. Crying of Lot 49 is very short, which is part of the reason that I really liked it, but this one is not overly long, so I'm going to put it on my TBR. My dad also gave me all the Dayworld books in hardcover, and I've already read Dayworld, so this is going to go on my red shelf. Unfortunately, I did purchase Dayworld Rebel a few months ago, but my dad also gave me another copy of Dayworld Rebel and a copy of Dayworld Breakup. There's only one other short story in this series that I need to read, so I'm really excited to have this awesome matching set. I'll probably read this one though that I got because it's way smaller and cuter and easier to hold. Dayworld follows a time in the future where the world has become so overpopulated that people can only live for one day a week. But in the first novel, Dayworld, we meet a daybreaker who actually lives every day of the week. In the Cookman Little Free Library, I found An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I'm super excited to have found this one. I read a short story by Tayari Jones a few months ago, and I really enjoyed it, and I've been wanting to find An American Marriage and read this. I found The Bookshop, a novel by Penelope Fitzgerald in a Spring Lake Little Free Library. This is a really short little book about a woman who changes her whole life by bucking expectation and opening a bookshop. This does not come super highly recommended. I think a Book Olive didn't really like this one, but it's so short and it just seems like a fun read. It's been on my want to read list for a while, so when I saw it, I knew I was going to pick it up. Also on my want to read list was The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This is a Turkish writer, but her parents are Iranian, and this book is set in Tehran. I've been wanting to read more Irani writing, and I was lucky enough to read Funny in Farsi in April and then find this one towards the end of the month in Belmar, New Jersey. 3 books that I found at the Cookman Little Free Library that I'm not really going to talk about here because they were in my Workday in My Life video, so if you want to see that, I will have it listed down below, are The Borrowers Afloat by Mary Norton, Michael Tolliver Lives by Amistad Maupin, and The Velvet Rage, Overcoming the Pain of Growing Up Gay in a Straight Man's World by Alan Downs, PhD. Like I said, go check out that video to hear more of my thoughts on those books. I was super excited to find a new little free library in Spring Lake in New Jersey, and one of the first books that I found there was Appleseed by Matt Bell. I don't know what it's about, except that I do know it's like cli-fi and science fiction, and it's really long. It's almost 500 pages. It's not quite as long as it looks, but I know it's going to take some resolve for me to read this one, but I am excited to get to it. In that same little free library, I found Winter Counts, which is by David Heska Wambley Winden, who is a Native American or Native Canadian author, and this is a thriller slash mystery. I found Memory Wall by Anthony Doerr. This is short stories written by the author of Cloud Cuckoo Land. Now, Cloud Cuckoo Land is not one that I'm super interested in reading, partly because it's so chunky, but I thought that since so many people like his writing, my dad recently read that book and my friend Haley read Cloud Cuckoo Land and really enjoyed it, I thought it would be good to pick up this book of short stories and see if I enjoyed it. A nonfiction that I found in another new little free library in Tin Falls, I think, is South Africa Without Apartheid. Now, I had just been saying that I wanted to read more about South Africa and I wanted to read more history about apartheid because I read Trevor Noah's memoir in February, and then I found this nonfiction in April. I love the bold text and the colors on the cover. This is definitely like a very academic text, so I don't know when I'll be getting to this one, but I am excited that I have it and I can read more about the history of apartheid. This book was written in 1986, so I don't know how much of it is going to be problematic or entirely accurate for today's world, but I think it will give me a good history and overview. I'm just really interested to learn more about this subject. Another nonfiction that I found in Red Bank, New Jersey is Hidden History of Maritime New Jersey. This is like a super fun little book. It has a lot to do with shipwrecks and maritime trade in New Jersey throughout history. So I'm excited to read this. It's like kind of a nerdy nonfiction about my home state, but I do love reading books like that. It's one of those books with like a lot of pictures and a lot of space and not that much text. So I think this will be a quick, easy nonfiction read. Maybe I'll read it in November for Nonfiction November. In that new little free library in Spring Lake, I found Palace of the Drowned by Christine Mangan. She is the author of Tangerine. I've never read any of her other books, but I had just heard Mercedes talk about her work a little while ago, and this just seemed like an interesting historical fiction. The premise sounded interesting when I read the flap. I can't remember what it's about. I've been kind of picking up some historical fictions with the idea that maybe I'll read one in May. I found quite a few awesome vintage sci-fi books in the Cookman Little Free Library. I go to the Cookman Little Free Library like once a week, so I always end up finding some good stuff. I found Palm Sunday by Kurt Vonnegut. I've never read this Kurt Vonnegut, but I always pick up vintage Kurt Vonnegut's when I find them. This is a weird cover because it's just a picture of him and his dog, but I'll put it in my Kurt Vonnegut collection, and when I get to it, I'll get to it. Farmer in the Sky by Robert A. Heinlein. The Rolling Stones by Robert A. Heinlein, which this is a very tribble cover. Very tribble. Tunnel in the Sky by Robert A. Heinlein, and Grumbles from the Grave. The previous three books, I don't know what they're about, but I know that this was a posthumous publication of Heinlein's memoirs and musings and nonfiction writing about his life, so I'm very interested to read this one. And then the last vintage sci-fi I found is Off Center by Damon Knight. This one has a really cool back cover where it says, "See into the future as an ordinary human bends the past to his will. Hear the words of tomorrow as man and dolphin finally learn to communicate." And then taste, touch, smell, and imagine. I just couldn't pass this one up. I got Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, a classic children's book, young adult book about a group of animals. I can't remember if I've ever read this one. I feel like maybe this one was read to me, or maybe I listened to this one on audio when I was a child, but I really loved the cover of this one. It has illustrations inside too, but they're not quite as good. I thought this was a good one just to have in my collection. I found another Louise Erdrich book, Future Home of the Living God. I think this one is also maybe cli-fi and has something to do with mythology as well. I don't really know if I like Louise Erdrich yet, but I keep picking up her books. I have 3 or 4 of them now, and I really have to read a couple and see if they're for me, and if not, just unhaul the rest. An author that I know I do like is Italo Calvino, and I found this very short little novel called Under the Jaguar Sun. I read The Baron in the Trees last year and really liked that, so I was super happy to find this one at the Spring Lake Municipal Building Little Free Library. I mostly picked up Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn as a cover grab, and because the first line says it has something to do with Jamaican life, but I didn't realize that this book is also queer, so I'm super excited to have picked it up at my local Locust Park Little Free Library, and I plan on reading this one in June. I read World War Z and the Zombie Apocalypse Handbook, or whatever that book is called, a long time ago. I loved World War Z. It was such an interesting oral history and a look at the geopolitical global implications of a plague. It reminds me a lot of the pandemic and how different countries and islands and nations dealt with the pandemic. It's very topical for now, and I would highly suggest reading it if you're interested. It's not so much a zombie book as it is a look at a global plague, so I definitely suggest you pick it up if you're ready or interested in reading that. Devolution by Max Brooks, I'm a little more hesitant to pick up, but I did find it at a local free library and I wanted to grab it and just see if I liked it. This might go in a try a chapter. It's another kind of oral history. I think it's written in journal entries, and it's about looking for a Bigfoot type creature. That could be really cool, but I've heard really bad reviews of this book. I totally unexpectedly found a little free library, had to do like a quick U-turn on a street that I'd never been down. Have no chance of finding that library again because I don't know where I was at the time, but in it I found Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. This is an epic poem written by an unknown author, and it's historical, just looked really interesting. In that library, they had some information on the library itself and also some book recommendations, which I thought was such a cool idea. And of course, you could use this as a bookmark in your book. And in the same little free library, I found How to Hide an Empire, a history of Greater United States by Daniel Immerwahr. This was recommended by, I don't know who I saw read this book. She's Canadian American and she really liked it. It's all about how America is a colonizer and an empire and how that is kind of brushed under the rug, especially in American history. So I will link her channel down below where I heard of this book, but when I saw it in that little free library, I had to pick it up. So I was super happy to find 2 books in a very new little free library. Also, these 2 books made me think I probably would like the people who live in that house. Maybe. In a little free library near a school in Monmouth Beach, I found Dancer from the Dance. This is a gay classic, and I've had this on my want to read list for a while, so hopefully I can get to this one in June for Pride Month as well. I found The Last Picture Show by Larry McMurtry in a little free library in Ocean Grove, New Jersey. I'm not super interested in Larry McMurtry's most famous book, Lonesome Dove, but my dad was telling me about the movie of The Last Picture Show, and it sounded really interesting. This is such a short little novel, and it's coming of age story. It seemed like it would be up my alley, so I picked it up. I found the XMan, I don't even know who this is by Ray Celestine. This is a historical fiction mystery taking place in New Orleans about the famous, infamous Axeman murders. The Axeman was a serial killer working in the late 1800s in New Orleans. I recently read a book in the Skip Langdon series, which is all set in New Orleans, that focused on a new Axeman working in the 90s in New Orleans. I thought that this historical fiction would be an interesting one to try. Penultimately, I actually found 2 copies of Dubious Battle by John Steinbeck. This copy of Dubious Battle was the first book that I found in a little free library in April, and I was really excited to find it because I've never heard of this Steinbeck novel. I really like Steinbeck, so I was surprised that this was a book that I've never heard of. And then later in the month, I found this copy of it, and this copy is way better. This copy's okay, but I like the trade format of this, so maybe I'll read this one, but then keep this vintage copy. Either way, I'll probably only be keeping one of these copies unless I totally fall in love with this book, but I wanted to show you both of them. Lastly, in that new Spring Lake Library, which they have so many good books, I'm excited to always go back there and check it. I found In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a contemporary thriller set in 2 timelines about people who are going to their high school reunion. This book is on my 21 books I found out about in 2021 list, so I was so excited to find a copy of it in that library. And I'm very excited to read this book. It's definitely one of my most anticipated 2021 releases and one of my most anticipated 2022 reads. Those were the remaining 30 to 35 books that I acquired in April. Now, I say this every month, but I'm hoping to acquire less books in May. I felt like I was on a good track for a little while where I would acquire like 12 books, but I would read 12 books. March, I only read 10 books, and in April, I only read 11 books. And then I acquired 60 books this month, so I'm far outweighing my acquired books to my read books at this point in the year. What am I going to do with all these books? I have a limited amount of time. I can't always be reading, even though that's what I wish I could be doing. So hopefully in May, I will acquire slightly less books, many less books than I acquired in April, but we'll have to wait and find out. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I found in Little Free Libraries or I got for free this month. Let me know if I should prioritize any of these, and let me know what the last book that you found for free was. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!